Being burnt out isn't a badge of honor. The real flex is having a regulated nervous system. Welcome to Tried and True with a Dash of Woo, where we're all about mixing tried and true strategies that actually work with the magic of manifestation and the science of programming your unconscious mind so that you walk away feeling integrated, inspired, and aligned. I'm Renee Bowen, certified life and business coach, professional photographer, middle-aged wife, and mom to now 3 grown kids. I've built 2 multiple 6-figure businesses with 0 business training by digging in, learning the methods, and now I'm here to pass them all on to you. From photography and business strategies to energy healing, human design, and the basics of manifestation, we cover it all here. I'm here to help you embrace your multi-passionate brains and lean into the fastest and most efficient ways to reach your goals, whatever they may be. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, or maybe you're just here for the woo-woo, let's dive in and explore all the exciting ways to take your life, business, and self-improvement to the next level. Thanks for joining me, and get ready to be inspired. Today on the podcast, we are talking about your nervous system and why the real flex is to be regulated, to be the calm in the chaos, to be able to act instead of react, to be able to actually sustain your business without being in fight or flight all the time. Now, I, as a coach, work with a lot of creative entrepreneurs, mainly photographers, but all kinds of creative entrepreneurs. And I hear from many of you on the daily, whether it's in my DMs or on my coaching calls. And this is something that comes up literally all the time. And I really believe that this is a huge problem because a lot of you guys seek out coaching or mentoring because you know you've got an issue with your business. But what you don't realize is that when you're taking a top-down approach to, fixing these issues in your business, and even if you have the desire to work on your quote-unquote mindset, if you're taking that top-down approach and trying to think your way out of it using just strategy, it's not going to work. This is why I continued my education as a coach to get specifically trained in how to rewire the nervous system, the unconscious mind. Because if we're just trying to work on mindset and think our way out of the problem, that just causes us to overthink and adds to our anxiety. We already have enough of that as entrepreneurs. I'm going to throw some stats at you guys real quick, okay? These are all from 2023 and specifically related to entrepreneurs. According to a study conducted by University of California, 50% of entrepreneurs face burnout. Another recent study found that 29% of small business owners feel constantly stressed by their work. Again, this is something they chose to do. This is not someone working for someone else. Another one found that 41% of entrepreneurs report higher levels of anxiety. And another 72% of entrepreneurs are directly or indirectly affected by mental health issues, which could be related to burnout. And then 60% of entrepreneurs report sleep disruptions due to stress from their own businesses, which can be a contributing factor to burnout. We know if you don't sleep, you can't actually reset your brain and heal your body. So in this podcast, I want to talk about why mindset alone, or just surface level mindset that you get with most coaching programs or mentoring programs, isn't enough. I'm also going to cover what's happening in your brain when you're experiencing this burnout and what it can lead to in your body and how the mind and the body and the spirit are all connected. And then we're going to talk about how to get out of survival mode, because that's really what it comes down to. If you are experiencing burnout, you have probably been living in fight or flight for a number of years, maybe even your whole life. And you might not even know how to get out of it. But there's a way, I promise. So I talk a lot about our programming and how that programming comes about, right? So most of the programming and the limiting thoughts, limiting behaviors, all those things, if you find yourself saying things like, I've got to get out of my own way, what that really means is that you've got a limiting thought or a limiting behavior. All of those really come from these unconscious programming. You can think about it as like a computer that you were programmed against your will before the age of 7. Okay. And that is because before the age of 7, as brain development goes, we are in our most infant stage, if you want to call it that. But we are also in a theta state. Our brain waves are in a theta state. So we are in a creative state. That is why, as a child, it's very easy to believe in fairies and Santa. And hey, some of us still do. But what I'm saying is, it's very easy for us to live in a fantasy realm. Before the age of 7, we are just taking in all of our environment and sucking in all of the things that are around us. And there's no discernment really in what's good or bad per se. It is just information to our unconscious mind. And what happens is those sort of get stuck in there, right? Now, remember, our prefrontal cortex, which is an evolved part of our brain, doesn't actually fully form until your early 20s. So that's a big reason why being a parent of teenagers is really difficult, because you're an adult now, your prefrontal cortex is formed, and you're looking at your teenagers going, why are you so stupid? It's not that they're stupid. They literally are just not able to form the type of thoughts that you can, because your brain is developed more than theirs is. And so getting back to the programming of childhood, this is a big reason why you feel like you can't get out of your own way, because you've got these programs that are stuck. Okay. They're running on a loop. That's why a lot of people will say things like, I feel like I'm just on the hamster wheel and I can't get off. That's why. But you absolutely can get off, and you're not going to think your way out of it. Unfortunately, you can't think your way off the hamster wheel, because the problem with that is that most of us, because we're human, and also if you have a creative brain, you're probably more prone to it. But most of us as human beings, when we try to get out of our own way, or we embark upon this self-help journey, right? Because we already feel pretty crappy about where we are, it's real easy to let more of those thoughts of self-shaming and beating ourselves up. It's real easy to let those thoughts in. And once you let one or two in, it's like a landslide of self-sabotage, basically. So it attaches to this little inner saboteur voice, which is really just your unconscious mind trying to keep you alive. And it attaches to that, and then it opens the floodgates to more of those thoughts. So that's why it's really easy to beat yourself up. That's why it's really easy to crack the whip on yourself. And you can find yourself saying things like, I suck. I don't know why I can't do this. So instead of trying to embark on this self-help journey, you end up self-harming yourself, basically. And this is why so many people come to me and say things like, I can't do this by myself. I can't get out of my own head. This is why. You're a human being. First of all, recognize that this is a very, very common thing, but it's also because you're trying to work top down. There is a different component here. Now, as human beings, we are not just our brain alone. We are not just our body alone. And we're not just our spirit. So I would really encourage you to start looking at yourself and your journey as a holistic one. And that is why I call myself a holistic coach, because we are going to take in all of these factors of you and not just one. So here's the thing. Most people seek out a coach or a mentor or a business coach or whatever it is because they have an issue, usually with their business. They're not making money. That's usually what shows up. What shows up is a symptom of something bigger. It's just like going to the doctor. You go to the doctor because maybe something is hurting. You're in pain, or something feels off. Something just doesn't feel right. And then you start to run some tests and you realize that this may be completely unrelated to what you thought it was originally about. And this is kind of what happens when you come to me as a business owner with a symptom of, I don't have any business. I can't get business. I don't know how to get business. I suck at marketing, whatever it is. That is usually what happens. We have to start running some tests. We have to start digging deeper to find out what actually is going on. Because here's the thing. Your business is a direct reflection of how you feel. I'm going to say that again. Your business is a direct reflection of how you feel. So if you are unregulated, if you are in fight or flight all the time, if you are constantly worried about where is the money coming from? How am I going to support my family? Why can't I make this business work? If you are stuck in that, how could you possibly build what you want to build? That's just not how it works. You can't operate from a place of lack and get more. You can't constantly be worried about money and make money. You're literally just getting back what you're putting out. And so that is why thinking and thinking and thinking just doesn't work. It's also why it's really important to work with someone who understands this entire system and how it works together, right? Because a business mentor, let's just kind of break it down for a second as a side note. A mentor, you go to a mentor to learn a specific system that that person has mastered, that they understand, and they can teach you exactly what they did to get that result. Okay. There are a lot of people throwing around the word coach. It's actually one of the biggest growing industries online, specifically in the last 3 years since COVID. You will see so many people pop up and call themselves a coach, and it's completely unregulated. At least it is right now. The coaching industry is not regulated yet. Okay. So it's very important for you to understand that when you're seeking out a coach, they are not vetted necessarily by any system. And I'm including myself in this because I am a coach. However, there are some of us who have gone through specific trainings, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of different modalities out there, right? So it's important for you to do your own vetting, your own due diligence in seeking out a coach, because a coach is different than a mentor, and a coach is different than a therapist. Okay. Now, there are some therapists who are also coaches, and there are also mentors who are also coaches. So it's really important for you to understand going into your experience, what am I trying to get out of this? And what kind of experience do I want to ultimately have? Specifically for me, I have a very, I think, unique way of working with someone. It's extremely customized and individualized. And I like to take in the entire being of that person, not just their issue with money or their issue with marketing. Again, that is a symptom of what is going on with them. It means that there is a misalignment somewhere, usually in their programming, their unconscious scripts that they're running. And I really believe, because I've seen it work on myself as well as my students, that we can absolutely rewire that with intention. And when we approach it from the inside out like that and realize that we are a whole being with many facets and not just a brain, that's where we can get so much deep work done. But you do have to be willing to open up to it. Remember too that most of the things that come up as limiting beliefs are things that are holding you back. They're coming from that lizard part of your brain, the oldest part of your brain. That is the only part of the brain that you were operating from as a child. It is literally there to keep you alive. It is just there so that we can progress as a human race. So it is going to do everything it can to keep you safe and alive. It is only when we begin to develop and our brain develops that we are able to start thinking about more, what we want in the future, how we want to change. That's where the conflict comes in, because now you have a desire for something better, for something bigger, and for something different. But your unconscious mind does not want you to do anything different because it perceives it as danger and something that's going to kill you. So how can you get past that? Again, you've got to work from the inside out. It's not going to work if you're just trying to follow specific quote unquote mindset tips from people you see on the internet. Some of those tips are awesome, but unless you're willing to actually do some work and implement them, they're not going to work. And here's the other caveat. Everybody's brain is different. Some of you, a lot of you, have neurodiversity. A lot of it is undiagnosed. Some of you have mental health issues on top of all this. Anxiety, depression, especially since COVID. It's on the rise, which is completely understandable. So everyone's brain is different and everyone learns in a different way, right? You're not going to learn the same way that I do. So what I think is one of the most important things as an entrepreneur is to have self-awareness. And I always call it, you guys who coach with me know, I talk about your tool belt a lot, right? And how we incorporate all kinds of different modalities into this, whether it's human design or the Enneagram or a myriad of personality tests. But I want to help you get more aware because again, your business is a reflection of how you feel. And if you feel depressed and anxious and in fight or flight all the time, how do you think your business is going to look? And how do you think you're going to run it? Because what's happening when you're burnt out is that your lizard brain is trying to keep you alive, like I said, but the way in which it does that is it is trying to conserve energy. It's trying to send blood flow to your legs so you can run. It's trying to send you adrenaline so that you can get out of a scary situation. Okay. The problem is that you could be sitting at your computer just trying to write a social media post and your brain thinks that you are literally being chased. And so your legs start shaking or you start shaking from the adrenaline, or maybe you sweat, maybe you start having heart palpitations and it feels like you're having a panic attack because you are in that moment. And then it's just a runaway train of fear, right? Those of us who have struggled with anxiety and specifically panic attacks know that it is really a fear of fear. Once you have a panic attack, it feels like you're dying and you never want to have that again. First panic attack I ever had, as a little side note, I was in college. I was probably 19, maybe 20. I think I was 19. And I was living in an apartment with my roommate and I went to bed just like normal, went to sleep. It was like a school night, whatever, it was in the middle of the week. And I woke up from a dead sleep with my heart racing. I felt like I was going to throw up. I felt like I just felt like I was going to die. I felt like the most scared I've ever been in my entire life. And there was absolutely no reason. No logical reason for me to be feeling that way. None. So I tried to deal with it on my own for a little bit, but I was so scared. I woke my roommate up, who was one of my really good friends. Shout out to Keeney. If you're listening to this, you saved me that night, girl. And as a fellow Virgo, we just got along really well, but she was just so much more chill than I was always. So I wake her up and she's like, what the heck is going on? I tell her how I'm feeling. I'm telling her that I really, really something's wrong. So I call my mom. My mom and I are super close, right? Call my mom in the middle of the night. And she tells me, I'm pretty sure you're having a panic attack, because she totally understands what that feels like. She's like, I feel like you're having a panic attack. Just why don't you have Keeney bring you over to the hospital just to make sure. It'll make you feel better. And I was like, okay. So in the middle of the night, we go to the ER. My mom meets us there and the docs are running through the list. Of course, I'm 19 years old. So they're like, what drugs have you done? They think I'm on all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I am not that person. I'm not that college student. Yeah, I'll do a lot of drinking, but that's about it. I was too afraid to do anything else. I was that kid who was so afraid to take anything because I was 100% sure that the first time I did it, I would die. So again, I have had undiagnosed anxiety disorder my entire life. I was that kid at 7 who would wake up crying because my house in my mind had caught on fire and everyone had died. And I also was that kid who lived through the 80s as, the whole nuclear war situation. And that took me down like a major anxiety highway. So I've had anxiety my whole life. So those of you who have anxiety, you understand. I didn't really get diagnosed with this until much later, by the way. This little panic attack that happened, they gave me some Valium, which was amazing, by the way. It was the first time that I ever remember feeling calm. And then I kind of went about my own business and said, oh, well, that was weird. I hope that never comes back. And then it became the fear of fear. Please, God, don't ever let that happen to me again. So yes, as a side note, I did go to therapy. So that was a good thing, but I didn't take medication or anything like that for years. And I didn't really start having any more panic attacks until after I had my kids and my hormones went crazy. So this is the other thing I want to mention to you guys for the women who are listening to this podcast. If you are just a woman in general, but specifically if you are dealing with any kind of perimenopause or menopause, so 35 to 55, let's say, if you're in that age range specifically, and you are dealing with major like depression or anxiety or being in fight or flight all the time and feeling very dysregulated, I want you to realize that your hormones are probably playing a very big role in this. And a lot of our medical providers, unfortunately, do not dig deeper because we're women. I just saw the Amy Schumer special where she said that. She's like, oh, sadly, none of this research has been done because you're a woman. I'm laughing, but it's kind of true. Okay. So we're just told to deal with it, suck it up. Your labs look fine, but you don't feel fine. You don't feel good. So that is another part of this. And this is something literally just in the last 2 weeks, I've had multiple conversations with coaching students about. They are dealing with fight or flight, dealing with major mental issues and burnout and, wanting to burn their business down to the ground because it is so overwhelming. And they are really dealing with menopausal symptoms. That is a huge, huge factor. Do not discount the power of your hormones. Okay. So you got to make sure you're getting the right kind of treatment. I am not a medical doctor. I am not going to give you medical advice. That's my disclaimer here. But I want you to keep looking for answers because there are answers. And if your provider is telling you that your labs are fine, but you don't feel fine, please go seek another provider. I realize that our healthcare system is not ideal, but there are answers out there. I found them. It took a little while, but I found them. So I want you to know and want you to really hear that there is hope for that. Don't let that be something that stops you. But you have to get this whole picture in line. You've got to be integrated with everything. It's not just your mental health. It's not just your hormones. It's not just your mindset. You are a multifaceted, multidimensional, powerful being. You are an energetic source. Of course, you're going to have a lot of different things that you need to address, right? But I just want you to hear that there are answers out there. So little hormonal side note there, tangent, but it's important. I want you to hear that. I also want you to hear that when you regulate your nervous system from the inside out, integrating your entire being, you are going to approach everything in your life very differently. You're going to approach your relationships with everyone so much more differently. And that includes your clients. I'm always talking about how when we want to run any kind of high touch, luxury based business, because that's what I do and that's what I teach. If you want to do that, and you want to provide more amazing high touch experiences for your clients, you have to be regulated or you're going to feel like the life is getting sucked right out of you. And this is why so many of you are burnt out. There are a lot of photographers specifically who I know for sure because they are in my DMs telling me how burnt out they are. But the rest of you guys think that they have it all together. The rest of you guys think that their businesses are running extremely smoothly. because they have an influx of clients and they look like they have it all together. And they look like on the surface, everything is amazing. But underneath it, they're falling apart, like bad. The sad part is that a lot of them know this consciously, but still are not working from the inside out to fix it. And what I mean by that is working with your unconscious to reset and rewire these programs, because you absolutely can. You do not have to continue to believe the stuff that you were programmed. A lot of it is completely untrue. It's not even what you believe. There's also a lot of work to be done with your somatic self. Like somatic healing is an amazing modality. Look into it. It's awesome. When you work with your entire being, your body, your mind, your spirit, that's where real healing can happen. And that's why so many people are drawn to self-help at first, right? You start seeking out someone who can help you get out of your own way. And a lot of you guys are in therapy, and I'm a big believer in therapy. Therapists are really, really great at helping you go back to that past and to look at what exactly is the cause of this. Okay. I do some of this in my coaching too, not obviously at the therapeutic level. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I do believe that it's important to sort of look at that so that we can go back and see and also be very trauma informed. That's something that I'm really big on. But a coach is someone who's going to help you look to the future. A coach is someone who's going to present possibilities to you that you may not have been able to consider on your own. And a coach is going to help you strategize your way to that, right? So I always tell my clients, I'm not going to give you the answers because those are my answers. I am going to ask you the right questions so that you can find your answer, so that you can find what it is that whisper has been trying to tell you. The superpower of a good coach, I believe, is in the quality of their questions and also in how they're able to connect with you, because there is a certain level of connection that needs to happen when you're working closely with someone, especially one-on-one. But even in a group, if you don't feel aligned with the person who is leading the group, you're not going to be able to access a deeper sense of connection and thus get to where you want to go, because none of the stuff is going to really make sense for you. Another little side note of this survival mechanism that we are programmed with is that this idea of judgment or judging other people, right? So in the last several years, there's been a huge uptick, unfortunately, especially online, of really mean-spirited judgment, focusing on people's disparities, disabilities, whatever. That is a primal survival mechanism that we all have that is biologically embedded in our brains because it is meant to keep us alive. Way back when, thousands of years ago, this served us well because anything that seemed different or off was dangerous. And we only needed to survive. Like we were just trying to survive biologically. Okay, that's still in our brains. That's still in that lizard part of our brain. So if you see people who are acting from a place of dysregulation like that, where they are constantly reacting, constantly in fight or flight, constantly lashing out at other people, they are still living from that survival mechanism. It is a survival primal urge, and it is not an evolved consciousness. We see this play out in many different ways, right? I don't know if you guys watch The Bear, but I'm probably going to start referencing this show a lot, either here on the podcast or on social, because I am absolutely obsessed with the show. I think it's one of the best TV shows that's come out in years. The writing, the way it's shot, it's so beautiful to look at. Like as a visual artist, it is like eye candy and so good to watch, but the writing is so beautiful, you guys. So if you're not watching it, absolutely do. We just binged season 2, and there's so much so much of this in that show, so much family trauma, so much reactivity, dysregulation, but also so much beautiful evolving out of it. So many good character arcs. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but like, if you guys ever want to geek out with me about this show, just hit me up in the DMs on Instagram at Renee Bowen. I'm happy to chat about the bear. Like, oh my God, there's a character on there that I'm just like, I love his arc. Anyway, you see so much chaos and dysregulation happening in many, many families. And that's why I think it's so powerful. And so many of us can relate to shows like that or scenes. When we see scenes like that, it's very uncomfortable. Like there was definitely, I think it was episode 6 in this season that was like incredibly uncomfortable for me to watch, but so powerful. It's a great reminder visually of how a dysregulated nervous system and consistently lashing out at other people keeps us stuck in this old lizard part of our brain in survival mode, in, caveman mentality, basically. And in many respects, like a child, because you're still acting as if you are that wounded child when you're coming from that place. It's not representative of an evolution, right? But when we start to bring our awareness to what we're doing, and that is really the first step, is to bring your awareness to what is actually happening. Why am I reacting like this? Why did I just lash out at that person? Where does that come from? That's like that first gateway drug into self-help, right? It's like, okay, there's something happening here that doesn't feel in alignment with where I want to go. Let me investigate further. And that's usually when people start looking into their own self-help or mental health, or if they run a business, it could also show up in their business. Whereas I'm not really sure how to do all of these things. I feel like I'm running in a circle. I can't get out of the circle. I hear these are things that I hear from clients all the time. I have all these ideas. I don't know how to implement them. I had a good business for a few years. It's died. I don't know how to get it back. People aren't spending money the way that they used to. I obviously need to change something, right? So all of these things are little triggers that show up that tell us that something is not in alignment with where you want to go, which is a really good sign. And that's what I want you to hear, is that if you're having thoughts like that, it's a really good sign, because it means that you have an awareness that something is off and you are not willing to continue to participate in that line of thinking. So that means you're way ahead of the game, because there are a lot of people out there who don't. We see them on Twitter every day, right? What I was just talking about before, that mentality of bringing people down and lashing out at people and being mean and mean-spirited. That is such a perfect example of people who are unwilling to actually evolve. And it's also a sign of not being very intelligent, in my opinion, because you're not having to use any other part of your brain. And for those of you who want to have something better, something different, something more, you absolutely can. You don't have to live in fight or flight. You don't have to be the burnt out creative entrepreneur. It is not a badge of honor. I see so many of you guys out there calling yourself Hot Mess Express. And I know it's fun. And I know it's a way to commiserate, because when you see someone calling themselves a Hot Mess Express, you're like, oh my God, so am I, right? Misery loves company. So it's really natural to align with that person. But at the end of the day, it's not aspirational, and definitely not something I want to be a part of and to have like in my awareness. It's not pulling me forward, right? I made a decision years ago that I was only going to surround myself with people who were where I was at or where I wanted to be. And I don't know if you have friends or anyone in your circle who are constantly pulling themselves down, whether they're calling themselves a Hot Mess Express, like they're talking about how chaotic they are, but they never really seem to do anything about it. And so you end up hearing the same stories over and over and over again. and you feel terrible for them and you probably care for them a lot. But at the same time, it's not something you want to really participate in. That's kind of what I'm talking about right now. If you find yourself swimming in the sea of dysregulation and constantly being reactive and constantly feeling stressed, my first question to you would be, do you want to do something about it? And if the answer is yes, I highly recommend working with your unconscious mind. I want to personally invite you, the photographer who's listening to this podcast, to join my group coaching program, Elevate. I know you've probably heard me talking about it, but if you haven't, let me give you the rundown real quick. So there's 3 different levels, and I've never offered this before. The reason I'm doing it this way is because I really want to meet you where you are. Some of you are ready for a little bit, some of you are ready for a lot, and some of you are ready for like the in-between. So just like Goldilocks, maybe you fit right there in the middle at the level called evolution. So there's a level called foundation that's only $49 a month. Then there's evolution, and there's all access. All access includes an in-person workshop with me in California in January. So if you've been wanting to learn from me in person, see how I shoot, see how I pose, work with models, how I direct them, this is going to be the option for you. Now, there's only, I think, 4 spots remaining for that because it's limited to 12 people. And honestly, if we only have 10, that makes it even better because it means more time for you. I designed that level with those of you in mind who really are seeking to level the F up in your business. It is a more high-touch program. It includes Voxer support with me, which means it's a voice texting app. You get to Vox me in between our calls. We have 2 calls per month, and you get 2 one-on-one calls with me throughout the course of the 6 months. So all access is a 6-month commitment. It starts in July and goes through December, but you sign up now. In fact, signups close on July 5th. Evolution is the level right underneath that and is very, very similar to all access, but it doesn't include the in-person workshop. So maybe you don't need a workshop or maybe you can't access that, but this level is going to still give you a high level of support because you're also going to get those 2 calls a month and the Voxer support as well, just like all access. It also includes weekly social trends. That's included across the board, all levels. I'm going to pop in once a week, whether it's in the Facebook group, the private Facebook group, or your Voxer thread, if you're in the top 2 levels. And I'm going to tell you what's trending that week on TikTok, as well as trending audios for Reels. Nobody else in our industry is doing this. I'm doing this because I know you need help. And I know you want to get out of your own way. I'm giving you a chance to do that. But you have to take the action. All the links you need are going to be in the show notes. And if you have questions, you got to hit me up on Instagram or shoot me an email at Renee Bowen on Instagram or Renee@ReneeBowen.com. Everything you need is in the show notes. It's up to you. The ball is in your court. Because your thinking brain, your evolved brain can only get you so far. It'll get you to the help, right? That's the cool thing is that it'll get you to seek out help. It'll get you to want more and to dream bigger and to set higher goals for yourself. But unless you're working on the program that's running in the background, you're not going to be able to fix it. And you're going to feel like you're constantly shooting yourself in the foot. There are a lot of different ways to regulate your nervous system. I won't go into all of these on the podcast. I've talked about it a lot on my TikTok and different videos and things like that. And maybe we'll do a podcast that is specifically on it if you guys are interested in it. But what I feel like is an extremely powerful and fast way to do this is to use hypnosis or guided visualization, even meditation. A lot of you guys can't meditate because it feels like it's too much work and you can't like quiet the creative brain enough to do it. The reason I love hypnosis is because it's working directly on your unconscious and you don't have to do anything. And for me, what that looks like is listening to hypnosis tracks. I make my own. I include them in all my programs, even Elevate, my group coaching program. You get access to varying levels of hypnosis tracks. And this is a game changer for most of my coaching students. Those who actually do them, those who actually listen to them, this is like a fast track way to program that stuff that you've been running. And it gets you out of those primal urges of survival. because you were meant to live, not survive. And most of you are just working on your businesses constantly and you're not really living. And that's why you're burning out. I understand that getting out of your comfort zone is really difficult if you don't have the belief that you can actually accomplish what you want to do, right? And that is because your brain is trying to conserve energy. Like I said before, its job is to conserve energy. So if your brain perceives this goal, this thing that you want to do as unattainable, it's going to just conserve energy and shut you down. And that's why you constantly revert back, because you've got the old programming. But when you get to the source of that and you rewire it through hypnosis, through coaching, through many different modalities that you can do, somatic healing is a great one, you actually fix it. Now, this varies for every person. For some people, it's very quick. For some people, it's a little bit longer. You might have other issues that I mentioned before going on. You might have hormonal issues. You might have physiological issues. You might have a mental health disorder on top of all of this or because of it. And so until you really kind of work with everything that's going on there, it's going to be really hard to kind of get to the heart of the issue. So sometimes it does take, peeling back the layers before you kind of get to it. The important part is that you peel them back. I always talk about this in terms of like my son, when he was going through school, and he has autism and he had a lot of sensory issues. And his teachers would constantly talk about how they couldn't get him to learn his multiplication tables or whatever. There was always a deficit that they led with at these IEP meetings, right? Like it's always about like what he actually couldn't do. And I always challenge them to say, okay, that's cool, but have you addressed his sensory issues? Because he literally can hear the lights buzzing. He can hear the class down the hallway. He can smell someone's lunch across the way. And all of these sensory issues are prohibiting him from actually accessing his curriculum. And it is your job to get him to access his curriculum. If you're a special needs mom, you know what I'm talking about. It's all about accessing the curriculum, right? To get something written into your IEP. And they had to employ different things with like occupational therapists to help him be calm enough and to quiet his sensory issues enough so that he could learn. And this is very similar to what a lot of you guys are going through right now, being dysregulated. If you are dysregulated for any of the reasons that we just talked about on this podcast, it's going to be really hard for you to run a business, and it's going to be really hard for you to feel good. And those two things are directly correlated. So I want you to sit down and assess where you are right now. You don't have to do it right this second. In the next few days, maybe. Sit down and really write down how you feel on a daily basis. And maybe just take a little journal every morning about how you feel when you wake up versus how you feel when you go to bed. Like, did you start out feeling good and then end the day feeling like crap and beating yourself up? Or did you start out in a bad place and end in a bad place, or vice versa? Where are you? Gauge that first and really take stock of how reactive you are to your day. What changed for you if you did wake up feeling pretty good and then you went to bed not feeling good? Was that just like a random thing that happened? Because obviously we all have things happen to us that, can cause us to be reactive in some kind of way. And some of them are pretty valid reasons. But there's a lot of stuff that happened consistently that we don't even know are happening because we're just in a hypnotic state all day and just going through the motions of hating our lives. Life is too short to do that, you guys. There is a way out of it. But the first step is you realizing where you're at right now. So write it all down. Do that for like a week or so. Take stock of how you feel in your body, how you feel mentally. Do you have aches and pains? Is it difficult for you to walk, further than a mile? Is it hard for you to sleep on a nightly basis? Do you wake up often? Do you wake up in distress? What's going on in your business? Are you having a hard time relating to your clients? That's usually because you're having a hard time relating to yourself, by the way. Are you having a hard time understanding how to build this business? Are you beating yourself up every time you go to make a post on social because you feel like someone's going to judge you? What does that remind you of from your past? Take stock of where you are. That's really the first step in getting any kind of help and in changing anything that you want to change in your life, right? You got to know where you are. And then I want you to sit down over the next week or so and allow yourself the space to dream about what it could look like if you were untethered by societal norms, if you were untethered by financial obligations. What would that look like? Wouldn't it be cool if, fill in the blank? Wouldn't it be cool if my business started thriving? Wouldn't it be cool if I felt happy every day when I woke up and stayed happy all day? Wouldn't it be cool if whatever that is for you? Because the other part of this is that you can't get to where you want to go unless you know what that is. And a lot of us are so dysregulated that you don't even have the space available to dream about what that would look like. Don't worry about the how right now. Get clarity on where you are, what's uncomfortable about it, and where you want to go. That's the first step. Whether you're looking for any kind of personal development help or business help, that's really the first step is like, okay, taking stock and then looking at, okay, where do I want to go? How do I want the rest of my life to look? Okay, I'm going to be 53 in, I don't know, 3 months? I like to kind of like opt out of the time frame sometimes and just feel like I'm still in my 20s because I kind of do feel like I'm in my 20s a lot of the time. But I really also wouldn't go back to that. No. I'm going to be 53 this year. I don't know. None of us know how long we have. But I do know, and I made a decision a few years ago that I was not going to live in fight or flight anymore because I lived in fight or flight my entire life up until then. I had spurts of not living in fight or flight, but when I really took stock and I looked back at my life and I realized how I really was reacting all the time, I realized it was always from a state of survival in some way and a constant inner dialogue of fear. And even before I had kids, I was like that because like I mentioned, I had my first panic attack at 19 and I had a history of anxiety. But boy, once I had kids, it showed up with guns a-blazing. Like the minute I became a mother, I became exponentially more fearful because all of a sudden something could really hurt me. Something happened to that kid. Oh my God. So then it became the helicopter parent. Like, don't do this. Don't touch that. Put them in a padded room. Awful. Not how I wanted my kids to be raised at all. So looking back, I realized a few years ago, I was really operating from a place of fear, of survival most of the time. And I decided I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to live my life and I wanted to be regulated and be the calm in the chaos, be the person that could be the voice of reason, be the person that my kids come to when they are in that state and they need to be talked off the ledge. Be that person for my coaching clients. Be that person for everyone even in my free communities. Be that source of calm. Because if I can show you that I've done it, that means you can do it too. As you know, if you're a parent, the best thing they tell you to do is to just live by example, right? If you want your kids to be healthy, be healthy. Don't tell them to be healthy. Don't give them eating disorders and harp on them and guilt them into things. Just be that example. If you want them to be kind, be kind. So for me, I want you to have a regulated nervous system. So I have to have a regulated nervous system. I want to have a regulated nervous system. It is my choice. And so I believe that the more I talk about this kind of stuff, the more I bring it to your awareness, the more people I can hopefully help in some way. And that's part of my purpose. As a society, I really believe our greatest strength is in our connectedness and in our ability to evolve and our ability to care for each other. And we can't do any of that if we are dysregulated. We can't do any of that if we're in fight or flight all the time. By the way, there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. There's other responses, but fight or flight is the one that we mostly talk about. But freeze is definitely a trauma response as well, and survival mode instinct. And so is fawn, which means So freeze and fawn to me are kind of similar, but freeze means literally frozen in fear, not moving, unmoving, unwilling to move, right? Whereas fight or flight, we know what those are. Put your hands up, we're going to fight. Like you're going to face it and yell and be reactive. Flight, we're running. That was always my go-to. Nope, I'm not going to look at that. I'm just going to run away and not think about that. Push it under the rug, right? Freeze, just not being able to do anything. And then fawn is making yourself small so that bad things don't happen, right? Very codependent sort of tendencies come out of that. Like they call it fawn because it's like a baby deer, right? Like, ooh, don't hurt me. I am very unable to defend myself and that kind of stuff, right? So there's all kinds of, survival mode instincts that kick in and you could display all of them in a given day, really. But the idea is for you to look at them and realize that's what's happening. And this is not really in alignment with where I want to go. So wrapping this up, I want you to really hear today that if you have the desire to change, you absolutely can. It's a lot easier than you think. Let me just rephrase that. It's a lot more simple than you think. Simple and easy are not the same thing, okay? It's not as hard as you think. It's actually quite simple, but it's not easy to do. And I get that. But I'm here to help. Reach out to me if you want to talk further about any of this, or reach out to someone you trust. But being burnt out, being a hot mess is not a badge of honor. It's not. It's not the flex. Being calm, being peaceful, being the voice of reason, being a leader in your community, being kind, being connected, that's the flex. And if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're on that journey or you'd like to be. And I'm really appreciative for you. Thank you for joining me here as always. I love you guys. I want the best for you. I'll talk to you next time. If you're looking for extra help with your mindset and you want to dive into hypnosis, you can purchase my hypnosis tracks individually from the store. I'll include the links in the show notes, or you can purchase my private podcast, Calibrate, where I talk about all of this kind of stuff and more. And I'm constantly adding all my new hypnosis tracks. So going forward, I won't be adding any more single tracks to the store. They're all going to be put on Calibrate. And what's cool about Calibrate is that it's a private podcast. And the rate that you purchase it at right now, it's at $55. You're locked in for that. It's going to go up over time because over time, I'm going to be adding more and more tracks to that, hypnosis, activations, meditations, all of that's going to be there and it's going to increase in price over time. But you're locking in your price at $55. And what's really neat about it is that all you have to do is put the link into the Apple Podcast app and it shows up as a podcast, just like all of the other podcasts that you listen to, like this one, but only you can access it because you have your specific link. So if you want something that's really easy, it's going to be updated often, Calibrate is a fantastic opportunity. It's included in most of my coaching programs, by the way. I just give it to you guys because I think it's such a fantastic resource. But if you are not in any of my programs and you're looking for specific ways to rewire your unconscious mind, Calibrate is what you want. Check the show notes for the link.